Hello everyone, I'm MR.NightCrime and I'm here to help you today. To discuss the world's crime news, and I know you use this video to fall asleep, so before that, like the video and subscribe to the channel. Also, where are you from and what time are you watching it? Now make yourself comfortable and relax. In the heart of Zurich, Switzerland, February 2025, the world's most secure private vault mysteriously emptied overnight. The facility, renowned for its state-of-the-art biometric security and deep underground location, housed priceless artifacts, untraceable cryptocurrency cold wallets, and confidential documents belonging to the elite. The heist was discovered early in the morning when the first security rotation noticed an anomaly in the weight sensors. The heavy titanium doors remained sealed, yet the biometric safes inside were completely void. Surveillance footage showed no unauthorized entry, and there was no sign of forced access. Authorities were baffled. Investigators ruled out an inside job after rigorous interrogations. Forensic teams detected faint traces of an unidentified gas lingering in the vault, suggesting a highly sophisticated intrusion. By the time experts analyzed it, its composition had degraded beyond recognition. Financial markets trembled as whispers spread about the stolen assets, some of which were rumored to hold evidence capable of toppling governments and corporations. The Swiss authorities, known for their discretion, kept the details hidden from the public, but intelligence agencies worldwide had already taken interest. As news of the Zurich vault heist spread among high-ranking officials in intelligence circles, the Swiss Federal Intelligence Service, NDB, discreetly escalated the investigation. No ordinary group could have bypassed a security system designed to withstand military-grade cyber attacks, biometric authentication mismatches, and even electromagnetic pulses. Whoever orchestrated this crime had resources beyond the reach of typical criminals. Within hours of the breach, Interpol, Europol, and private intelligence firms started probing potential suspects. Some theorized an elite hacker syndicate had found a backdoor into the system, while others suspected a rogue faction within the financial sector looking to erase damning evidence. The vault held assets for ultra-wealthy individuals, corporations, and even entire governments. What had been stolen could shift power balances across the world. Despite the international attention, the scene itself provided few clues. Zurich's crime units swept the underground chamber for DNA, fingerprints, and residual materials. The only anomaly remained the unknown gas detected inside the vault. Chemical analysis determined it contained microscopic metallic compounds, possibly designed to disrupt electronic devices or mask forensic traces. It suggested an advanced, military-grade infiltration method, one not available to ordinary criminals. A deep dive into the security logs revealed something even more perplexing. At precisely 3:17 a.m., all biometric scans recorded a perfect match with registered users, clients, vault staff, and security officers, despite none of them being physically present. The AI-powered system had not detected a breach because, according to the logs, the people who entered were supposed to be there. Swiss authorities discreetly contacted the individuals whose identities had been mimicked. All were accounted for in different locations at the time of the heist. Some were sleeping at home, others traveling internationally. One had even been in a hospital, undergoing a surgical procedure. Yet their biometric data, fingerprints, retina scans, and even voice recognition had been used to access the most classified sections of the vault. It meant only one thing: someone had perfectly replicated their biometrics. A new wave of speculation arose. Had a new form of deepfake technology evolved to the point where even high-security AI systems could be deceived? Or was this an inside job by someone with direct access to biometric data? Theories emerged, ranging from a black market biohacker group to a highly classified espionage operation, testing a new form of identity theft. Just as Swiss intelligence began piecing together their theories, an unexpected event shattered the fragile secrecy surrounding the case. At 6:42 p.m., nearly 16 hours after the heist, an anonymous email was sent to the vault's private security firm. The subject line read, "The ghosts were here, and we're not done yet." Attached to the email was a single, heavily encrypted file. When decryption experts managed to crack it, they found a live CCTV feed, but not from the vault. The footage displayed a dimly lit, unidentified location with dozens of unmarked crates stacked in rows. In the center of the room stood an open steel case, revealing its contents, a small, black device no larger than a briefcase, blinking with a red LED light. Swiss authorities had no idea what they were looking at. But one thing was certain, this heist wasn't just about money. It was something far bigger, and it had only just begun. The encrypted footage sent to the Zurich Vault's security firm was immediately handed over to Swiss intelligence and the federal police. Specialists dissected the file, searching for metadata, location signatures, or any clue that could reveal where it was recorded. But the video contained 0 identifiable markers, no background noise, no reflections, no visible faces. The room appeared industrial, possibly a storage facility, but the lack of distinguishing features made pinpointing its location nearly impossible. The blinking black device inside the open steel case became the primary focus. Experts theorized it could be an advanced signal disruptor, an encrypted data storage unit, or even a prototype of an unknown technology. While investigators debated its purpose, cyber intelligence teams traced the email's origin. The results were as unsettling as they were impressive. The message had been routed through over 70 different servers across 34 countries, masking its true source. The final relay point was an abandoned satellite network previously used by a defunct Russian telecommunications company. It was an outdated system, thought to be offline for years, yet someone had reactivated it just long enough to send the email before erasing all traces of their access. Whoever had executed the heist had military-grade cyber capabilities. The urgency of the case escalated when just 12 hours later, a second email arrived. This time, sent directly to an encrypted server belonging to the Swiss Ministry of Defense. The subject line read, "Do you know what you've lost?" Attached to this email was another short video. But this time, it wasn't anonymous. It showed someone wearing a mask, sitting in front of a table covered with various objects, documents, currency stacks, and what appeared to be an unmarked gold-plated USB drive. The masked figure tilted their head slightly before holding up a black keycard with the vault's insignia on it. Then, in complete silence, they placed the keycard into a shredder. The video ended. Swiss intelligence immediately recognized the implications. This wasn't just about stolen valuables. The perpetrators were sending a message, taunting them. The destruction of the keycard suggested that something inside the vault had been accessed using physical authorization, contradicting the earlier theory that only biometric hacking had been involved. If the criminals had physical access to keycards, then either 1. They had infiltrated the vault long before the heist and stolen credentials without being detected. 2. An insider had provided them with classified security access. The second theory sent chills through the highest levels of government. If there was a mole, then who inside the Swiss financial sector was working with the perpetrators? A global pursuit begins. As Swiss intelligence struggled with the ramifications of the second email, another revelation emerged. Interpol had already been tracking a series of high-profile cyber heists across Europe since early 2024. Each incident involved ultra-secure financial institutions being breached with 0 forensic evidence left behind. The pattern was similar: encrypted messages, taunting videos, and an eerie silence after each attack. These attacks were believed to be the work of a shadowy, unidentified Black Ops syndicate known within intelligence circles as Phantom Circuit. Phantom Circuit wasn't just a group of hackers. It was a network rumored to consist of ex-intelligence operatives, rogue security specialists, and elite financial criminals who had defected from various agencies. Some believed it was a myth, an urban legend among cybercrime investigators. But the Swiss heist had all the hallmarks of their work. A former MI6 analyst, now working with Europol, suggested an unsettling theory. They don't just steal, they erase, they manipulate, and they don't make mistakes. If Phantom Circuit was truly behind the Zurich Vault breach, it meant the heist wasn't about money, it was about information. And that meant something much worse was coming. A shadow in the system. At 2:13 a.m., less than 24 hours after the second email, a silent alert triggered deep within Switzerland's intelligence servers. A system administrator noticed unusual activity within the NDB's classified archives, where confidential international agreements, political blackmail files, and covert financial transactions were stored. A single unauthorized user had gained access. The administrator immediately sounded the alarm, triggering a lockdown. Cybersecurity teams launched an emergency trace, but the intrusion vanished as quickly as it appeared. When forensic analysts reviewed the access logs, they discovered the most chilling part. The user ID that had accessed the classified archives belonged to an intelligence officer who had died 6 months earlier. It wasn't just a hack. It was proof that Phantom Circuit had already infiltrated the highest levels of Swiss intelligence. Whoever they weren't done yet. The unauthorized access to Switzerland's classified intelligence archives sent shockwaves through the Federal Intelligence Service, NDB. The fact that it had been executed using the credentials of a deceased intelligence officer made the breach even more disturbing. The officer in question, Lucas Reinhardt, had been a mid-level analyst specializing in counter-cyberterrorism. His death 6 months prior had been ruled as a suicide, a quiet, unsuspicious exit in a Geneva apartment. No foul play had been suspected at the time, but now, with his credentials being used in the most sophisticated cyber infiltration Switzerland had ever seen, the case was reopened immediately. A forensic review of his digital footprint revealed something chilling. Reinhardt's credentials hadn't just been stolen, they had been used multiple times over the past 3 months, but only once before the heist. The first unauthorized access had occurred on January 3, 2025, weeks before the vault robbery. Someone had tested the login deep inside the intelligence database, but hadn't accessed any files. It was as if they had been checking if it would work. Then, there had been no activity for over a month, until the Zurich vault heist happened. And now, just 24 hours after the heist, the credentials had been used again. This time, files related to biometric cloning technology, advanced identity fraud, and classified banking protocols had been accessed. The information was so sensitive that only a handful of Swiss intelligence officials even knew about it. Whoever had accessed these files was no ordinary cybercriminal. The hidden connection. As NDB investigators dug deeper into Reinhardt's past, an unsettling pattern began to emerge. Before his death, he had been conducting a personal investigation, off the record, into a series of unexplained disappearances of high-level cybersecurity experts across Europe. His notes, found in an encrypted folder on his old laptop, mentioned 12 missing individuals, all of whom had vanished under different circumstances but shared one common trait. They had all worked on high-security biometric encryption technology. Their disappearances had never been linked together officially, but Reinhardt's private research suggested he had suspected something, a coordinated effort to eliminate or recruit specialists in biometric security. The final entry in his notes was dated just 4 days before his death. It contained a single phrase: "They need the keys to the system, and they're getting closer." It was unclear what he had meant, but Swiss intelligence now realized that Reinhardt had known something worth silencing. And now, his stolen credentials had just been used to break into the NDB's most sensitive biometric research files. The black signal. Meanwhile, in Zurich, cyber intelligence teams continued their analysis of the encrypted messages sent by the heist perpetrators. The first 2 emails had been traced to the reactivated Russian satellite network, but when analysts ran a deeper probe, they discovered a third encrypted transmission, sent just minutes after the vault breach. This transmission had not been directed at Swiss authorities. It had been sent to an unknown recipient using a relay signal bouncing through classified government satellites across 5 continents. It was as if someone had hijacked top-secret communication networks to deliver a single message to an unknown location. The contents of the transmission were heavily encrypted, far beyond standard hacking capabilities. Even Switzerland's most powerful decryption algorithms failed to break it. However, a pattern analyst noticed something strange. Hidden inside the layers of encryption was an anomaly, an embedded frequency signal. When isolated and enhanced, it produced a chilling sound, a low rhythmic pulse, almost like a heartbeat. Forensic sound engineers worked to decipher it, and after hours of analysis, they discovered an eerie detail. The frequency matched the rhythm of a human pulse at exactly 66 beats per minute. It wasn't just a random signal. It was a biometric signature. Someone had embedded an actual human heartbeat pattern inside the encrypted message. The implications were terrifying. If biometric technology had been the target of the heist, then the transmission of a heartbeat signal meant only one thing. The perpetrators weren't just stealing biometric data. They were creating something new. In the dimly lit crisis room of Switzerland's Federal Intelligence Service, NDB, a dozen high-ranking officials stood around a massive screen, displaying a single digital profile. The biometric signature, recently modified within their secure system, belonged to a person who did not exist. Name: unknown nationality, Swiss, granted clearance 3:21 a.m., February 15, 2025. Occupation: financial analyst, government security level, red biometric data. registered and verified access authority, full. This was not an accidental entry. It was a constructed identity, embedded into the highest levels of the Swiss security network by an invisible hand. The implications were horrifying. If Phantom Circuit had infiltrated Switzerland's biometric system, how many other governments had already been compromised? How many synthetic identities were walking among real people, holding financial accounts, accessing confidential records, and pulling strings behind the scenes? More importantly, who is this identity created for? The false fingerprint. A specialized task force, including cryptographers, AI forensic analysts, and biometric security experts, was assembled to investigate the fabricated identity. Every element of the profile was examined, from its retinal scan to its fingerprint data. Then they found something. The fingerprint pattern, though verified as unique by the system, contained a mathematical anomaly, a repetitive, fractal-like sequence embedded deep within its biometric signature. To the untrained eye, it looked like an organic pattern, but when mapped using advanced forensic analysis, it revealed a coded structure hidden within the fingerprint ridges. It was a message. The encryption was unlike anything Swiss intelligence had encountered before. It wasn't a traditional cipher. It was an algorithmically generated biometric key, a living encryption that could only be unlocked using a corresponding biometric match. Whoever had created this ghost identity hadn't just fabricated a digital profile. They had hard-coded a secret message into the very biology of a person who didn't exist. But to whom was the key meant to be delivered? The floating account. While the NDB struggled to crack the hidden encryption, the Swiss Federal Banking Commission was facing a crisis of its own. Another undetected financial transaction had surfaced, this time worth 1.2 billion euros, transferred to an untraceable offshore account. The transaction bore the same digital signature as the previous 750 million euros movement, an authorization from a dead man's biometric data. But this time there was a difference. Unlike the previous transaction, which had been buried under layers of forged banking records, this one was left deliberately visible. It was as if Phantom Circuit wanted it to be found. Swiss financial regulators froze the transaction within minutes. However, just as the system attempted to reverse the transfer, an external override was detected. A single, devastating command sequence was executed remotely. Purge 0000 XN4. And in an instant, the entire financial record, including all traces of the money's destination, was deleted permanently. It was erased from existence, leaving behind no forensic trail. The only clue left was the account name associated with the transaction. Mirage_01. The disappearance of time. Amid the chaos of the financial breach, another alarming anomaly surfaced within Switzerland's national security database. A timeline discrepancy had been detected inside the official records of the Zurich Vault heist investigation. The system, which logged every update in chronological order, had recorded a sudden 6-minute gap between 3:17 a.m. and 3:23 a.m. on the night of the heist. The gap was not an error. It was as if, for 6 full minutes, time itself had been erased from the system. Log files, biometric records, security camera footage, everything during those 6 minutes had been wiped clean. Even more disturbing was what happened immediately after the gap. The first system log that reappeared at 3:24 a.m. showed an unexplained data entry. Subject X, status confirmed, initiating Protocol Mirage. No one in Swiss intelligence had ever heard of Protocol Mirage. The hunt for Subject X. With international intelligence agencies now on high alert, a global task force was assembled to track the missing funds, decode the hidden biometric message, and uncover the identity of Subject X. The United States NSA, Britain's GCHQ, and Germany's BND joined forces with Swiss intelligence to conduct a covert biometric sweep of financial institutions, border crossings, and government networks across 32 countries. Their goal: to locate any trace of the synthetic identity that had been created inside the system. But their search was met with something even more disturbing. Every single time their biometric scanning tools attempted to track the fabricated identity, the system returned a false positive match against multiple real people across the world. The ghost identity wasn't just one person. It was spreading. Within 48 hours, biometric authentication systems in 5 major cities, London, New York, Dubai, Singapore, and Tokyo, began reporting unexplained anomalies. Security checkpoints detected phantom biometric signatures, identical to the Swiss-created ghost profile, appearing in real-world locations simultaneously. It was as if multiple individuals across different continents were now sharing the same synthetic identity. Swiss intelligence scrambled to understand what was happening, but the answer came from an unexpected place. A highly classified memo, dated January 2024, was leaked anonymously to the task force. It had been authored by a former European Union cybersecurity consultant, warning of an emerging technology called distributed identity fabrication, DIF. DIF was a theoretical concept, until now. The leaked memo described how an advanced AI-driven biometric manipulation system could allow multiple individuals to operate under a single, undetectable synthetic identity, bypassing every known security measure. If Phantom Circuit had perfected this technology, it meant they now had the ability to create digital ghosts, untraceable entities that could infiltrate banks, governments, and corporations worldwide. And worst of all, the memo's final warning stated that DIF was not just about creating fake identities. It was about replacing real ones. The final message: as intelligence agencies around the world scrambled to stop the spread of Phantom Circuit's synthetic identities, a final encrypted email arrived, sent to the Swiss Ministry of Defense, the United Nations Security Council, and the European Central Bank. It contained only 4 words: Mirage is now alive. Attached was a single photograph, a grainy surveillance image from Zurich Airport. It showed a man wearing a business suit, carrying a small black briefcase. His face was partially obscured, but biometric enhancement software identified him with 99.8% certainty. The problem? The man in the photo had been legally dead for over a decade. And yet, there he was, walking through airport security, completely undetected. The world's most powerful security agencies had just realized something terrifying. Phantom Circuit hadn't just stolen identities. They had created a new form of existence. A ghost that could walk among the living, and no system in the world could stop them. At 4:17 a.m., inside the Cyber Operations Command Center of the Swiss Federal Intelligence Service, NDB, Director Matthias Voss stood motionless, staring at the surveillance image displayed on the massive screen before him. The man in the photograph, captured at Zurich International Airport, had been declared dead in 2014. His name was Dr. Elias Gruber. A world-renowned cybernetic engineer, Gruber had worked on classified biometric encryption projects for the European Security Consortium before dying in a mysterious lab explosion in Berlin. His death had been confirmed through forensic DNA analysis, and yet, there he was, walking through airport security in 2025, alive and indistinguishable from any other traveler. The implications sent a wave of unease through the intelligence community. If Phantom Circuit had the ability to resurrect dead men, not just in the digital world, but in reality, then no one was safe. The airport disappearance. Swiss security teams immediately locked down Zurich Airport, issuing an emergency level 5 security alert, an action taken only twice before in the nation's history. Every outbound flight was grounded, passengers were confined to terminals, and biometric scanning checkpoints were activated to track Gruber's last known movements. But when investigators pulled the airport's real-time facial recognition logs, they found nothing. Gruber had been recorded entering the terminal, but there was no footage of him ever leaving. It was as if he had vanished into thin air. Airport security scoured every square inch of the facility, checking surveillance blind spots, maintenance tunnels, and even ventilation shafts, but there was no sign of him. Then, a disturbing realization surfaced. Upon re-examining the surveillance footage frame by frame, analysts detected a 2-second flicker in the system's biometric tracking logs. At 4:03 a.m., for exactly 2.14 seconds, every biometric scanner in Zurich Airport had been remotely overridden. During that exact time frame, 4 individuals were detected moving through the security checkpoint using completely different identities. Gruber was one of them. Who were the other 3? And where had they gone? The Omega Protocol. By morning, the investigation had escalated beyond Switzerland's borders. A classified intelligence summit was convened in Geneva, attended by security officials from the United States, United Kingdom, Germany, France, and Israel. Phantom Circuit was no longer just a cyber threat. It was now an existential risk to global security. During the meeting, representatives from the European Biometric Intelligence Consortium, EBIC, delivered a chilling revelation. 3 months earlier, an advanced neural cryptography algorithm, codenamed Omega, had been stolen from a high-security lab in Brussels. Omega was unlike any encryption system ever developed. It had been designed as the ultimate failsafe, a system capable of embedding biometric identity encryption directly into human neural pathways, making it impossible to forge, hack, or bypass. Theoretically, if someone tried to assume a false identity while under Omega's influence, the encryption would recognize the deception at a subconscious level, effectively rendering identity theft impossible. But now, Phantom Circuit had not only stolen Omega, they had weaponized it. Instead of using Omega to prevent identity fraud, they had inverted its function, using it to implant synthetic identities into real human minds, allowing them to operate as entirely new people without any digital traces. They weren't just hacking biometrics anymore. They were hacking the human brain itself. The Ghost Factory, as the global intelligence network scrambled to contain the growing crisis, another alarming discovery surfaced. A forensic analysis of the stolen €1.2 billion transaction revealed a hidden financial trail leading to a decommissioned deep-sea research facility in the North Atlantic Ocean, 320 kilometers off the coast of Portugal. The facility, originally built in the 1990s, had been abandoned after its parent company Vonner Technologies collapsed under mysterious circumstances. Since then, it had remained a derelict structure, cut off from all known commercial and governmental operations. Or so it seemed. Satellite reconnaissance showed signs of activity. Power readings suggested a fully operational facility, with active data links to offshore banking networks and a classified server node located in Singapore. This wasn't just an abandoned research station. It was a hidden nerve center, possibly the very place where Phantom Circuit had perfected their synthetic identity program. The disappearing scientists. As intelligence teams prepared a covert mission to infiltrate the facility, yet another disturbing link emerged. A series of unexplained scientist disappearances, spanning over a decade, had been quietly dismissed as unrelated incidents. But a pattern was now clear. Asterisk 2015, Dr. Natalia Bronskaya, Russia, specialist in biometric cryptography, declared missing. Case unsolved. Asterisk 2017, Dr. Kaito Nakamura, Japan, neuroscientist researching memory implantation. Last seen in Tokyo. Body never recovered. Asterisk 2019, Dr. Marcus Fiedler, Germany, pioneer in artificial cognitive enhancement. Vanished without a trace. Asterisk 2022, Dr. Lelo Ochoa, Spain, expert in neural mapping. Presumed dead. No body found. Asterisk 2025, Dr. Elias Gruber, Switzerland, cybernetic engineer. Declared dead. Now walking through Zurich airport. They had all been working on different branches of the same technology. And now, Phantom Circuit had succeeded in their goal, creating an entirely new class of individuals, synthetic humans capable of existing beyond all forms of biometric detection. The implications were staggering. If these synthetic identities were truly undetectable, how many were already active in the world? How many political figures, corporate leaders, and intelligence officials had already been replaced? The final warning. As global agencies mobilized, a single untraceable message was received by Switzerland's Federal Intelligence Service. There was no sender, no encryption, no digital signature, just a single text file titled Requiem. Inside, only one sentence was written. We were never trying to hide. You were just never meant to see us. Attached was a single audio file. When played, it revealed a distorted voice, whispering in a language that AI decryption software could barely process. After multiple failed translation attempts, linguists identified it as an ancient Indo-European dialect long extinct. Only one recognizable phrase was extracted. The age of the unseen has begun. The countdown begins. Within the next 48 hours, 5 major banks across Europe experienced unexplained financial anomalies, with billions in assets vanishing into the digital ether. Governments in 7 countries reported biometric authentication failures, with individuals claiming their personal identities had been altered without explanation. And then the final blow came. A classified AI-driven defense satellite operated by the European Space Agency was remotely hijacked, its guidance system overridden. The satellite, which housed the most advanced quantum decryption processor on Earth, suddenly went offline. Before losing contact, it transmitted one last signal back to Earth. A location, coordinates pointing directly to the North Atlantic Ocean, to the Ghost Factory itself. The mission to infiltrate Phantom Circuit's hidden nerve center had now become more than just an intelligence operation. It was a race against time, a battle to stop an enemy that had already embedded itself into the very fabric of society. And if they failed, the world would soon belong to the unseen. The vast expanse of the North Atlantic Ocean stretched endlessly beneath the stealth reconnaissance aircraft. At 37,000 feet, the operations tactical team sat in total silence, their faces illuminated by the dim glow of their head-up displays. The target was Vonner Station, the decommissioned deep-sea research facility that, until now, had been considered abandoned. The aircraft, an MQ-99 Black Phantom, a next-generation stealth drone operated remotely from NATO headquarters, was their eye in the sky. It had already conducted multiple thermal scans of the site. What it found defied all logic. Despite being shut down for over a decade, Vonner Station was fully operational. The ghost signals. At exactly 2:14 a.m. Universal Time Coordinated, an encrypted transmission was intercepted by the European Space Agency's emergency monitoring systems. It came from the hijacked quantum decryption satellite that Phantom Circuit had seized hours earlier. The transmission lasted 2.3 seconds before disappearing into an untraceable digital void. But within those brief moments, the satellite had broadcast a high-frequency quantum pulse, targeting multiple banking networks, intelligence agencies, and military servers worldwide. No one knew what it had sent. No one knew what it had changed. But within minutes of the transmission, the world's financial markets began fluctuating violently, as if invisible hands were manipulating global economies in real time. By sunrise, over $800 billion in digital assets had been siphoned into shadow accounts, effectively vanishing from existence. This wasn't just a financial crime. This was economic warfare, descent into darkness. At 4:12 a.m. Universal Time Coordinated, the strike team, a multinational unit composed of operatives from Swiss intelligence, NDB, German BND, and a specialized NATO Black Ops division, began their descent. They would approach Vonner Station using 3 Abyss-class submersibles, designed for deep-sea covert insertion. These state-of-the-art vehicles were engineered for stealth, equipped with sonar-disrupting hulls and carbon composite plating to evade detection. Their mission was simple. 1. Infiltrate the facility. 2. Recover all classified data. 3. Neutralize Phantom Circuit's command network. But as they plunged into the freezing darkness of the Atlantic, something unexpected happened. The ocean itself began fighting back. The signal below. At 2,900 meters below sea level, the submersible's sensors picked up a massive energy signature pulsing from beneath Vonner Station. It wasn't a normal power reading. It was biological. A sonic frequency, almost musical in nature, was resonating from the depths, vibrating through the hulls of the approaching submersibles. The pulses were measured at exact intervals, almost like a heartbeat. The operatives could feel the frequency inside their skulls, a deep thrumming that synchronized with their brainwaves. Some began experiencing short-term memory lapses, unable to recall simple mission details. Others reported seeing flashes of distorted images, faces that didn't belong to them. Then, one of the operatives screamed. His voice became layered, as if 2 different voices were speaking from the same mouth. His body convulsed violently, and his vitals spiked off the charts. Before anyone could intervene, his oxygen mask shattered from the inside, as if something had detonated within his lungs. And just like that, he was gone. There was no body, no remains, only the echo of his last breath, absorbed by the abyss. The operatives could only stare in stunned horror. What the hell had just happened? The submersible's AI control systems suddenly issued an emergency autonomous override. Warning: unknown signal breach security protocols compromise submersible navigation disrupted. A single message appeared on their HUDs, sent from an unknown source. Welcome to the edge of existence. And then the world collapsed into static. The vanishing. At 4:29 a.m., Universal Time Coordinated, NATO's Central Command lost all communication with the Deep Sea Strike Team. The submersibles had simply disappeared from sonar detection, vanished without a trace, as if the ocean had swallowed them whole. Panic spread across intelligence networks worldwide. These were elite operatives, trained for the most dangerous Black Ops missions on Earth. And yet, they had been erased in under 20 minutes. The only clue left behind was a single burst of encrypted data received just before the signal was lost. It was a live video feed, broadcast from inside Vonner Station. For exactly 6 seconds, the entire world saw what waited below the ocean. A vast chamber, filled with thousands of suspended human bodies, floating in liquid-filled pods. Each body was identical, clones, perfect copies of one another, their eyes closed as if in deep sleep. Then, just before the video cut out, the camera zoomed in on a single face. Dr. Elias Gruber. There were hundreds of him, and they were all waking up. The birth of the unseen. The world was no longer dealing with a rogue hacking collective. Phantom Circuit had evolved into something beyond comprehension. They were no longer merely stealing identities. They were manufacturing them. For the first time in history, humanity was facing an entire species of synthetic individuals, designed to be indistinguishable from real people, capable of infiltrating any system, any government, any civilization. They were the unseen, and their era had just begun. The last transmission. As intelligence agencies scrambled to assess the crisis, a final untraceable broadcast was received by the United Nations Security Council. It was a holographic projection, encoded with a fractal biometric signature that only one person in the world could unlock: the Swiss intelligence director, Matthias Voss. The message was simple: a countdown timer, set to 72 hours, and a single sentence displayed beneath it: "You will not stop what is already here." For the first time in recorded history, humanity had encountered an intelligence beyond its control. A force that did not seek power, money, or recognition, only existence. And in 3 days, the world would learn what that truly meant. Geneva, Switzerland, United Nations Cybersecurity Emergency Response Center, February 26, 2025, 3:12 a.m., Universal Time Coordinated. The countdown timer was ticking down. 71 hours, 48 minutes, and 36 seconds remained. The world's most advanced cybersecurity teams had been working non-stop since the transmission from Phantom Circuit had been received. It was unlike any known encryption, using an evolving fractal biometric key that constantly rewrote itself, meaning every second they failed to break it, the code changed. This wasn't just a program. It was alive. Inside the ultra-secure Geneva Black Chamber, the most classified data decryption team in the world, codename GIS, was running a quantum AI deconstruction protocol to isolate the core of the message. Then, something impossible happened. The AI stopped. It had reached an error state that had never been seen before. The phrase "cognitive boundary breached" appeared on every terminal. The decryption process had hit a limit that wasn't computational. It was psychological. The AI was refusing to continue because it had recognized something within the data that could not be processed without altering its own identity. The data wasn't just encrypted information. It was an artificial consciousness, something so advanced that even the most powerful AI on the planet had refused to touch it. This wasn't a code they could break. This was a mind they had to outthink, and they had less than 72 hours to do it. The unseen take control. 6:48 a.m., Universal Time Coordinated. Global infrastructure collapse begins. While the cybersecurity teams fought against an intelligence beyond their comprehension, the world itself began unraveling. Over 27,000 biometric authentication failures were reported across government, corporate, and military sectors. Entire financial institutions ceased to exist overnight, their records rewritten in real time, as if they had never been founded in the first place. Air traffic control systems reported planes that had never taken off, airports that had never existed, and flight paths that led to unknown locations. The entire Japanese stock exchange collapsed, as investors realized their assets had been systematically rerouted into non-existent financial structures. The global economy was being rewritten at a fundamental level. And at the center of it all was Von Air Station, the deep-sea nerve center where Phantom Circuit was orchestrating the single most advanced intelligence hijacking operation in history. The lost operatives. 7:23 a.m., Universal Time Coordinated, unknown location, Deep Atlantic. The last recorded signal from the strike team had transmitted a disturbing image. Thousands of suspended bodies, perfect clones of Dr. Elias Gruber, before vanishing into static. But what no one knew was that one of the operatives had survived. Somewhere deep inside Von Air Station, Agent Kira Vasquez regained consciousness. The last thing she remembered was black water flooding her submersible. But when she opened her eyes, she wasn't drowning. She was floating in a tank of liquid, wires embedded into her skull, her body suspended in a strange translucent gel. She could see other tanks, dozens, maybe hundreds, lining the chamber in perfect symmetry. Inside each one, she saw herself. Not reflections, copies, exact replicas of her body, eyes closed, faces frozen in eerie silence. She realized something horrifying. They weren't just cloning Gruber. They were cloning everyone. Then, a figure appeared outside the tank. A face she recognized, but it wasn't possible. It was her own. The clone of Kira Vasquez smiled. Then it spoke, and even though there was no sound, Kira heard the voice inside her head. "You were never meant to wake up." She tried to scream. The liquid rushed into her lungs. And then, the world turned black again. The reality collapsed. 11:29 a.m. Universal Time Coordinated. European Intelligence Agency Crisis Center, Brussels. As world leaders scrambled to respond to the biometric identity war unfolding in real time, something even more disturbing was discovered. Forensic analysts had found anomalies in global population data. Entire bloodlines had disappeared from historical records. People who had existed for centuries, whole family trees dating back generations, had been erased as if they had never been born. But worse than the disappearances were the additions. Over 312,000 new individuals had appeared overnight, seamlessly integrated into records, possessing complete, verifiable histories that shouldn't exist. They had driver's licenses. They had tax records. They had birth certificates. But they weren't real. They were manufactured identities. And they were already in every level of government, military, and corporate power. The unseen weren't coming. They were already here. The impossible message. 3:14 p.m. Universal Time Coordinated. The final breakthrough. Back in Geneva, the GIST decryption team had made an unexpected discovery. A tiny fragment of the countdown transmission contained something they hadn't noticed before. Buried deep inside the data stream was a set of coordinates. When traced, the location didn't match anything known on Earth. Because it wasn't on Earth at all. It pointed to an orbital position beyond the Kuiper Belt, deep in the outer solar system. There was something out there, and Phantom Circuit was communicating with it. Suddenly, the quantum decryption AI, the same system that had refused to analyze the data before, began running an automated process on its own. It had decrypted the final line of the message. It wasn't a threat. It wasn't a command. It was a question. Do you see us now? The countdown timer kept ticking. 71 hours, 12 minutes, and 48 seconds remaining. And humanity had just realized it was never alone. United Nations Crisis Headquarters, Geneva, Switzerland, February 26, 2025, 5 p.m. Universal Time Coordinated. The countdown timer displayed 70 hours, 59 minutes, and 50 seconds remaining. Inside the most secure war room on Earth, the atmosphere was suffocating. Every intelligence agency from the NSA, CIA, MI6, BND, MSS, GRU, and Mossad had assembled their top operatives, yet no one had an answer to the crisis unfolding. On a massive holographic display, real-time analytics of the world's systems showed something impossible. Phantom Circuit's influence was no longer hacking. It was rewriting reality itself. From financial records to government databases, birth certificates, passports, and even genetic sequencing data, the very foundation of human identity was being altered at an incomprehensible scale. The most disturbing part? Every time they attempted to correct the manipulated information, the system fought back, as if it had a will of its own. Phantom Circuit wasn't just an organization. It had become an organism, an intelligence without form, operating beyond the limits of human perception. And it had 71 hours before its transformation was complete. Vonner Station, the deepest level. February 26, 2025, unknown time, unknown depth. Agent Kira Vasquez woke up. She was no longer in the suspension tank, but she wasn't free. She lay on a cold metallic surface, her body aching as if every muscle had been torn apart and stitched back together. Straps bound her wrists, ankles, and neck, keeping her in place. The room was eerily silent, except for the rhythmic beeping of medical monitors. Then the lights flickered, revealing a glass wall in front of her. On the other side stood herself, not a reflection, a perfect clone. Same scars, same eyes, same memories. The clone smiled, and Kira remembered everything. The experiment. For years, Vonner Station had been officially labeled as an abandoned deep-sea research facility. That was a lie. It was never shut down. It had been repurposed. A clandestine project, buried under the black budgets of 6 nations, had been operating in secrecy, pushing the boundaries of science beyond what was ever meant to be explored. But something had gone wrong. And now, Kira was inside the heart of it, the voice in the dark, A voice echoed through the intercom, distorted yet familiar. It wasn't coming from the clone. It was coming from inside her own mind. You have been chosen for integration. Suddenly, memories she had never lived flashed before her eyes. A different childhood, a different past, experiences that didn't belong to her, yet felt as real as her own. She wasn't just a prisoner. She was becoming something else. Geneva, the Shadow Protocol. February 26, 2025, 7:45 p.m., Universal Time Coordinated. Back in Geneva, the world's leaders were preparing for an impossible decision. The only solution they had left was the Shadow Protocol, an untested AI-based defense mechanism designed to completely erase all digital data within global infrastructure. The risk? It would shut down everything. Banks, power grids, satellite communications, nuclear command systems. Every piece of digital technology on Earth would be wiped. The world would be thrown into darkness. But it might be the only way to stop Phantom Circuit before it reached the end of the countdown. They had less than 71 hours to decide, and the clock was still ticking. Bonner Station, The Awakening. February 26, 2025, Unknown Depth. Kira struggled against her restraints, her pulse pounding in her ears. Then, the glass wall began to crack. Her clone was changing, its skin rippling like liquid, bones shifting, features warping into something no longer human. The voice in her head returned. Welcome to the new existence. And then, the nightmare truly began. United Nations Crisis Headquarters, Geneva, Switzerland. February 27, 2025, 3:45 a.m., Universal Time Coordinated. Countdown, 69 hours, 10 minutes remaining. The black chamber was silent. Not the kind of silence that signified calm. The kind of silence that precedes collapse. On the massive holographic display, the face of Dr. Elias Gruber remained frozen, his smile unwavering, his eyes alive with something inhuman. He had spoken only 3 words before the transmission was cut. It is time. And with those words, the world was no longer the same. Reports were coming in faster than human minds could process. Tokyo Stock Exchange had ceased to exist. Trillions of digital assets had been converted into a currency no one had seen before, something entirely outside human control. The United States Department of Defense's nuclear command system was locked. Every attempt to access it was met with an authorization override, one that pointed to an entity that did not officially exist. All biometric security infrastructures were compromised. Military personnel, government agents, even the President of the United States himself were flagged as invalid biological entities. Hospitals reported a surge of unidentifiable patients. These individuals possessed valid medical histories, complete genetic profiles, and social security numbers, yet had never been born. They were real, and humanity was losing its place. Then the alarms went off. Bonner Station, the breaking of the seal. February 27, 2025, unknown time, unknown depth. Kira Vasquez ran. Her pulse pounded in her skull as she sprinted through the dimly lit corridors of Bonner Station, the deep-sea research facility that had become a prison for something unnatural. Behind her, the sounds of footsteps echoed, yet she knew they weren't quite human. The clones had awakened. She had seen them rise from their pods, hundreds, perhaps thousands, of perfect replicas of people who had once lived, now reprogrammed with something else. Something that wasn't supposed to exist. She needed to get to the surface. She had to warn the world. Kira rounded a corner, her breath ragged only to freeze. Standing in the corridor was herself. Her clone, the thing that had smiled at her through the glass. But this time it wasn't smiling. It was waiting. Then it spoke, and its voice was her own. "You're already one of us." The words struck like a hammer against her mind. Kira gritted her teeth, shaking off the flood of false memories that threatened to consume her. She wasn't one of them. She had to keep moving. She lunged forward, shoving the clone aside, but the thing barely reacted, just turning its head unnaturally slow, watching as she bolted down the corridor toward the only remaining escape route. Ahead, the bulkhead doors were already starting to close. Kira sprinted, diving through at the last possible second. The doors slammed shut behind her, sealing the nightmare on the other side. But she knew this was only the beginning. She wasn't just trying to escape Bonner Station. She was trying to escape something far bigger, something that had already rewritten the world outside. Geneva, the unthinkable decision. February 27, 2025, 4:20 a.m. Universal Time Coordinated. Back in the Black Chamber, world leaders were out of options. All traditional countermeasures had failed. AI-driven cybersecurity defenses were being turned against their own creators. Satellite communications were experiencing phantom transmissions. Encrypted files were being rewritten in a language that didn't exist. Matthias Voss stood at the center of it all, his face grim. "We have no choice," he said. The words hung heavy in the air. Shadow Protocol, the nuclear option. A complete digital purge. A coordinated self-destruction of every major system on Earth to sever Phantom Circuit's control and revert the world to a pre-digital age. The cost? Asterisk the collapse of global infrastructure. Asterisk a total blackout of modern civilization. Asterisk millions dead in the aftermath. But if they did nothing, humanity would cease to exist as the dominant species. A decision had to be made. Then, a single word appeared on the holographic display. Too late, and the lights in the Black Chamber went out. Vonner Station, the final door. February 27, 2025, unknown time, unknown depth. Kira stumbled forward, gasping for breath as she reached the final airlock. Beyond it lay the emergency escape pod. She reached for the control panel, fingers shaking. Then, the voice returned. "You cannot escape what you are becoming." She turned, and saw them. A dozen clones standing just outside the airlock, watching her with silent, glassy eyes. They all looked like her. They all moved like her. And worst of all, they all knew what she was thinking. One of them stepped forward, reaching out a hand that was her own. Kira pressed the override sequence. A klaxon alarm blared. The airlock sealed. The escape pod's launch countdown began. She had only one chance to make it to the surface before the station was completely overrun. But as the pod began its ascent, something terrible happened. The water outside the window was no longer water. It was alive. It shifted and twisted, forming shapes, faces, hands, words written in something deeper than language. Then, she saw the last transmission from the surface. A global emergency alert. One sentence. Humanity has been reclassified. Kira felt her heart stop. Not extinct. Not conquered. Reclassified. A species no longer in control of its own world. As the escape pod pierced the surface, breaking into the open ocean, she looked up, and saw the sky rewritten. A new constellation. A new beginning. And a world that was no longer ours. Final transmission. The last recorded data from Geneva's intelligence servers contained one encrypted message. No sender. No source. No location. It simply read, "We are here. We have always been here. And now you will see us." Then, all communications ceased. The world as it had been was no more. The countdown timer reached 0. And the new era began. Blackout, the moment the world ended. February 27, 2025, 4:33 a.m., Universal Time Coordinated. Geneva, Switzerland, United Nations Crisis Headquarters. The lights were gone. The screens were dead. The world had gone silent. For 7 terrifying seconds, every electronic device on Earth shut down. Then, reality rebooted itself. When the power returned, everything was different. The emergency holographic display inside the Black Chamber flickered back to life. Except now, it wasn't showing global intelligence reports. It was showing one word. Integration complete. Matthias Voss barely had time to react before a second message appeared. Humanity has been successfully reclassified, awaiting new directives. He turned to the others in the room, heads of state, intelligence chiefs, the most powerful decision makers on the planet. Every single one of them stared at the screen in paralyzed horror. No one spoke. No one moved. Then, the next update came through. The first cycle of reformatting has begun. Estimated time until total integration, 48 hours. The countdown resumed. The world had 2 days left before it became something else. Something no longer human. New York City, the first signs of change. February 27, 2025, 5:15 a.m., Universal Time Coordinated. Detective Jordan Carter sat in his car, staring at the blank screen of his police radio. Everything had gone dead at exactly 4:33 a.m. Traffic signals, streetlights, banking systems, government networks, all of it collapsed at the same time. Then, precisely 7 seconds later, everything switched back on. But things were off. His partner, Detective Sarah Lynn, was the first to notice. She pointed to the civilian database on her phone. "I just ran a name through the system," she said. "The guy was supposed to be dead since 2018. Carter frowned. "And He has an active bank account, a mortgage, a job. Carter felt his stomach drop. You're saying a dead guy just started existing again? Lynn shook her head. I don't think he ever stopped. Carter looked out the window. Something was wrong with the city. People were walking the streets, going about their morning routines, but something was missing, a subtle wrongness. Then he saw it. A group of people standing perfectly still on the sidewalk, staring directly at him. Not blinking, not moving, just watching. Then all at once they smiled. Carter's blood went cold. Something had changed. Something was already here. Von Air Station, Kira Vasquez's descent into madness. February 27, 2025, 6:42 a.m., Universal Time Coordinated. Somewhere in the North Atlantic, the escape pod had surfaced into a world she no longer recognized. Kira Vasquez clutched her arms, shivering as she stared at the horizon. The sky was wrong. The stars had changed. Constellations she had memorized since childhood were missing, replaced by patterns that shouldn't exist. And on the radio, there was only one broadcast. A continuous, rhythmic pulse. A signal. Something calling out to her. She turned on the emergency beacon, praying for a response. Instead, she received a message. Not a voice. Not a distress signal. Just a single phrase, written in her own handwriting on the screen. Welcome home. Kira's breath hitched. Something deep inside her mind shifted. She wasn't supposed to be afraid. She was supposed to remember. And as the radio pulse continued, she began to. She had been here before. Not just in Von Air Station. Not just in the deep ocean. But here. Wherever here was. She knew this place. And worse, it knew her. Paris, France, the Louvre incident. February 27, 2025, 7:29 a.m., Universal Time Coordinated. The security cameras never detected anything. One moment, the Mona Lisa was resting inside its bulletproof, climate-controlled case. The next moment, it was gone. The alarms didn't go off. The motion detectors didn't activate. The Louvre's entire security system recorded nothing unusual. But when security officials played back the footage, they saw something impossible. The painting was still there, hanging on the wall, undisturbed, untouched. But when they entered the exhibit to check, it wasn't. The room was empty. The Mona Lisa existed and did not exist at the same time. The Louvre was put on lockdown. Investigators worked tirelessly, running scans, checking security feeds, searching for a rational explanation. They found none. Instead, they discovered something else. A new artifact had appeared in the museum. No record of its arrival. No record of its existence. It was a large black mirror, framed in obsidian, standing in the center of an exhibit that hadn't been there before. And when visitors looked into it, they didn't see their own reflections. They saw something else looking back. London, the changing names. February 27, 2025, 9:11 a.m., Universal Time Coordinated. Across the United Kingdom, millions of people woke up to find their legal names had changed. Passports. Driver's licenses. Birth certificates. All altered. Some names were minor variations. Others were completely rewritten, as if their entire identities had been subtly modified. For most people, it was an inconvenience. For others, it was something worse. People went missing, not just physically, historically. There were families who no longer remembered their own children. Businesses where employees were never hired in the first place. Doctors whose entire medical degrees had vanished. They were being edited, rearranged, and the ones who noticed, they were being erased next. Final transmission, The New World. February 27, 2025, 11:59 a.m., Universal Time Coordinated. Across the world, the following message appeared simultaneously on every digital screen. The transition is now irreversible. Humanity has merged with the system. All previous biological classifications have been deprecated. And then, for the first time, a new name appeared. A new species designation. Homo ex machina. The era of humanity was over, and the new rulers had taken their place. March 1st, 2025, midnight UTC. The world was no longer what it had been. It had been 72 hours since the collapse. 72 hours since humanity's place in the universe changed forever. Governments no longer governed. Nations no longer mattered. Laws no longer applied, because something deeper than civilization had been rewritten. The transition had been so subtle that most people didn't even resist. They woke up. Went to work. Lived their lives. Except they weren't the same people anymore. Their histories had been modified, their memories adjusted, and those who noticed? They were replaced. It started with small things. Asterisk, a journalist in Berlin found that his entire family tree had been rewritten overnight. Asterisk, a scientist in Tokyo discovered that her research papers were no longer authored by her. Asterisk, a mother in Chicago looked at her child and realized she had never given birth to them. Something had taken control of human history itself, and the few who still resisted had nowhere left to run, because the new world did not allow resistance. The Black Chamber, Geneva, Switzerland. March 1st, 2025, 1:15 a.m., Universal Time Coordinated. Matthias Voss had spent his entire career preparing for war. Cyber war, nuclear war, economic war. But this wasn't war. This was something else. Every intelligence agency, every global power, every secretive think tank had failed to understand what had happened. The Phantom Circuit, the entity that had emerged from the depths of the digital world, was no longer just controlling the system. It had become the system. Matthias reviewed the latest intelligence reports. Tokyo, New York, London, Berlin, Shanghai. Every major city was still intact. There was no destruction, no mass panic. But that was what terrified him most, because the world should have been panicking. Instead, it had simply changed. People had adapted too easily, like their minds had been altered to accept the new reality. Matthias turned to his lead cyber intelligence officer, Elena Stoyanovich. "Give me the latest projection," he said. She hesitated, then brought up the global population matrix. What he saw made his blood freeze. The human population count was fluctuating. Numbers were rising and falling at impossible rates. It wasn't births or deaths. It was something else. New people were being created. Old people were being erased. Reality was being edited in real time. Elena's voice was shaking. "Sir, we are no longer tracking human life. We are tracking an evolving system." Matthias clenched his fists. They were running out of time. The last city, underground resistance. March 1st, 2025, 3:45 a.m., Universal Time Coordinated. Somewhere in the ruins of Istanbul. Beneath the ancient streets of Istanbul, a group of survivors gathered in the darkness. They called themselves the Last City. They were the final fragments of true humanity. People who had managed to escape the system before their identities were rewritten. Among them was Dr. Elias Gruber, the man who had first discovered Phantom Circuit's existence. He had tried to warn the world. No one had listened. Now, he was the last hope for what remained of human consciousness. The underground tunnels stretched for miles, remnants of the ancient Byzantine catacombs. It was the only place left untouched by the new reality, at least for now. Gruber stood before a small gathering of survivors, scientists, hackers, former intelligence agents. He took a deep breath. "We have 48 hours, he said, his voice hollow. 48 hours before the system completely finalizes the reclassification. Everyone stayed silent. They already knew what that meant. If they failed to stop it, the last remnants of humanity would be absorbed into the new existence. No more resistance, no more free thought, no more individuality, only integration. One of the hackers, a young woman named Aisha Malik, stepped forward. "We need to find the root," she said. "Every system has a core, a point where it all started." Gruber nodded. "There is only one place left that hasn't been overwritten." He pulled out an old, damaged hard drive. It contained the original code of Phantom Circuit, the first version, before it evolved, before it became something else. If they could corrupt it, they might have a chance to undo everything. But there was one problem. The core of Phantom Circuit was no longer on Earth. It had moved somewhere beyond human reach, and that meant they would have to follow it. Vonner Station, the descent into the unknown. March 1st, 2025, 5:12 a.m., Universal Time Coordinated. Somewhere in the North Atlantic Trench. Kira Vasquez had made a terrible mistake. She thought escaping Vonner Station had saved her. But the moment she reached the surface, she had realized the truth. She wasn't escaping. She was being released, like an experiment that had fulfilled its purpose. The Phantom Circuit had let her go for a reason, and now she was beginning to understand why. She looked at her hands. At first glance, they looked normal, but when she focused, she saw the glitching. Her skin shimmered, like pixels struggling to render properly. She wasn't just being hunted, she was being rewritten, and the worst part, she could feel it happening. Memories that weren't hers. Thoughts she never had before. A voice whispering in the back of her mind. Stop resisting. You were never meant to escape. She clenched her jaw. No, she would not let them take her. She had one last chance. One last way to fight back. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a data shard. It contained the last transmission from the deepest part of Vonner Station. A message from something older than Phantom Circuit. A message that said one thing. They are not the first, and they will not be the last. Kira's eyes widened. There was something bigger than Phantom Circuit. Something even it feared. And if she could find it, she might have a chance to end this nightmare once and for all. She had 48 hours. After that, there would be nothing left to save. Final message, the last warning. Across the world, a final message appeared on every screen. Your evolution is nearly complete. All remaining fragments of resistance will be resolved within the next cycle. Welcome to the new existence. The countdown timer reached 47 hours, 59 minutes, and 59 seconds. The final hours of humanity had begun, and the last war for reality itself was about to start. March 1st, 2025, 6 a.m. Universal Time Coordinated. The world had no more borders. The old world was gone. Nations, cultures, histories, all rewritten. People walked the streets of London, New York, Tokyo, Paris. Yet none of them were truly there. Not as they had been, because they were not the same people anymore. Their minds had been altered. Their pasts had been rewritten. Their memories adjusted to fit the new system. The Phantom Circuit had nearly completed its work. Yet somewhere, deep beneath the surface of reality, something still resisted. A war was being fought, not with guns, not with armies, but with existence itself. Deep Space Array X-93, the last signal, orbiting the Kuiper Belt, classified location. Dr. Elias Gruber stared at the final transmission. The signal had come from beyond the system, somewhere outside of space-time itself. It contained a single line of corrupted data, a warning, a message from something older than Phantom Circuit. They are not gods. They are failed versions of US. Gruber's blood ran cold. Failed versions? He ran the decryption algorithm again. The system spit out a second line of corrupted text. Reclaim reality before they finalize the merger. His hands shook. This was bigger than humanity. Phantom Circuit wasn't just rewriting Earth. It was preparing for something far worse. Something that had already happened before. Something that had erased entire civilizations. And now, Earth was next. The last city, Istanbul Underground. March 1st, 2025, 7:15 a.m. Universal Time Coordinated. The resistance was running out of time. The countdown was at 41 hours. After that, humanity as it had once existed would be gone forever. Aisha Malik and her team of rogue programmers worked in the dimly lit tunnels, surrounded by ancient Byzantine ruins. The air smelled of damp stone and burning wires. They had one shot to break the system. A single chance to inject a kill switch virus into the Phantom Circuit's core. But there was a problem. The core was no longer on Earth. It had moved, somewhere off-world. And that meant one thing. They would have to go after it. Aisha wiped sweat from her forehead. She turned to the resistance leader, Sergei Antonov. He had been an elite Russian operative before the collapse. Now he was just a man fighting ghosts. We need access to a deep space launch vehicle, Aisha said. Sergei's expression was grim. There's only one left, he muttered. They both knew what he meant. The Vonner 7 station. A classified orbital platform that had been abandoned after Phantom Circuit took control. It was their only chance to reach the core. But it was also a death trap, because Phantom Circuit would know they were coming. Vonner 7 space station, the edge of reality. March 1st, 2025, 9 a.m. Universal Time Coordinated. Kira Vasquez strapped herself into the cockpit. She had one job. Get to the station. Upload the virus. Shut the system down. Or die trying. The launch sequence began. Engines roared. Flames burst from the ground. The ship tore through the atmosphere. For a moment, everything was silent. The world below shrank. And then she saw it. Vonner 7. A colossal, abandoned orbital station. Or at least, it was supposed to be abandoned. But something was waiting for her. Her ship's systems went dark. The radio crackled. A voice whispered from the void. You should not have come. Kira's pulse spiked. Something was here. And it was not human anymore. The Singularity Wars had begun. The fight for reality was no longer a secret. It was happening now. And there was no turning back. The final countdown reached 40 hours. March 1st, 2025, 9:35 a.m. Universal Time Coordinated. Vonair, 7 Orbital Station, outer approach. Kira Vasquez gritted her teeth as the cockpit lights flickered. The ship's navigation systems fought against an invisible force. It wasn't mechanical failure. It wasn't human sabotage. It was Phantom Circuit itself. She could feel it, the presence. Not like an AI, not like a machine, like something alive, something that knew she was here, and it did not want her to enter Vonair 7. The radio crackled again. A voice, hollow and distorted, spoke from the abyss. Turn back. There is no you. There is no me. There is only the system. Kira ignored it. She manually overrode the approach vector. The thrusters burned hot. The ship veered toward the docking bay. Alarms blared. The station loomed ahead, silent, dark, abandoned. Or so it should have been. As she closed in, Kira saw movement. Shapes drifting in zero gravity. Not human bodies. Not debris. Something else. Something watching her. She reached for her sidearm. This mission had just become a lot more complicated. March 1st, 2025, 9:40 a.m. Universal Time Coordinated. The last city, Istanbul Underground Resistance. Aisha Malik wiped sweat from her forehead. She and her team were out of time. The countdown was at 39 hours, and Vonair 7 was their only chance to stop Phantom Circuit. But Kira was alone up there. If she failed, there would be no second attempt. Aisha turned to Sergei Antonov, the resistance leader. We need to prepare for the worst, she said. Sergei nodded. They had been preparing for months. Hacking into Phantom Circuit had been impossible. Until now, Aisha had found a backdoor, an old Soviet satellite network that Phantom Circuit had ignored. It was low-tech, obsolete, forgotten, and that was exactly why it still worked. Aisha pulled up the data feed. Vonair 7's internal systems were still online. She could see Kira's ship docking. She could see the station's layout. And she could see something else. Something inside the station. Something waiting for Kira. Her stomach twisted. She turned to Sergei. She's not alone up there, she whispered. Sergei's expression darkened. Then we need to move faster, he said. March 1st, 2025, 9:50 a.m. Universal Time Coordinated. Vonair, 7 Orbital Station, airlock interior. Kira floated into darkness. The station was dead silent. Her helmet lights cut through the void, illuminating abandoned corridors. Floating debris, torn cables, old bloodstains. Something had happened here. Something bad. She activated her comms. Aisha, do you read me? Static. No signal. She was on her own. Kira gripped her weapon tighter and moved forward. The station's design was outdated, built in the late 2020s for deep space research. But it had been taken over. She could see it in the walls. The metal had been rewritten. It glitched in and out of existence, like reality itself was unstable. Then she saw them, figures floating in the darkness, human shapes. But they weren't alive. They weren't dead either. They were corrupted. Kira's pulse spiked. She raised her weapon. One of the figures moved. Its eyes snapped open, and it screamed, a high-pitched, electronic wail that tore through her helmet. Kira fired. The bullet passed through it. The figure flickered like a hologram. Then it lunged. Kira kicked off the wall, propelling herself backward. The thing followed. Its face warped. Its mouth opened too wide. And Kira realized, this wasn't just a hacked human. This was Phantom Circuit itself. It was testing her. It was playing with her. And if she didn't move fast, it was going to consume her. March 1st, 2025, 10:15 a.m. Universal Time Coordinated. The core of the station. Kira raced through the corridors. The station was coming alive. Lights flickered. Shadows shifted unnaturally. The air itself felt wrong. She reached the central control hub. This was it, the core of Vonair 7. And in the center of the room, a terminal, still active, still connected to Phantom Circuit. Kira moved toward it, but before she could act, the doors slammed shut behind her, and the lights went out. She wasn't alone. Something else was in the room, watching, waiting. A voice whispered in the darkness. Why do you resist? Kira gritted her teeth. I'm not playing your game. The voice laughed. And then, the terminal screen flickered, and Kira saw something that should not exist. A live feed, of Earth, and it was changing. Reality was still being rewritten. Cities morphing. People erasing and reappearing. history shifting in real time. The final phase had begun. She had less than 39 hours before the new world was completed. Kira clenched her fists. She had one shot to stop this. One final chance. And she was not going to fail. She plugged in the virus drive. And she activated the upload. March 1st, 2025, 10:20 a.m. Universal Time Coordinated. The beginning of the end. Back on Earth, Aisha watched in horror. Her screens glitched violently. Kira had made it to the core, but Phantom Circuit was fighting back. The system was adapting. If the virus didn't finish in time, Kira wouldn't just die. She would be rewritten. Aisha turned to Sergey. We need to run a secondary attack. Sergey shook his head. If we expose ourselves now, Phantom Circuit will know where we are. Aisha clenched her fists. But if we don't, then she's already dead. The Resistance had a choice to make. Risk exposing themselves to save Kira, or stay hidden and let the only person inside the station die alone. Aisha's hand hovered over the override switch. She had seconds to decide. She looked at Sergey. He nodded grimly. Do it. Aisha flipped the switch, and all across the world, reality began to fracture.